Hello, this is Stephen, webmaster for PetGroomer.com. We're going to have another small chat here today, and one of the questions that often comes up from career seekers is, tell me the truth, can I really make a living as a pet groomer? The answer is yes, but that's not just a very detailed answer, is it? Because let's go back and ask the question, what's a living to you? This is what's very important, because some people will perhaps say, well, I need this much. I need to make that much. This is what my household budget is. I'm unmarried, so the cost of living is a bit different for me. I don't have another wage earner in the family who's sharing in the pot to pay all the bills. So you can see there's a tremendous amount of variables there. Why I do say yes is because pretty much you can make as much as you want in grooming. It's just that you will have to adapt your grooming career in ways to make the greater incomes as you go along. You're going to have to be willing to do X amount of things to do this. So let's take a look at that so we understand. But before we start, why do we really even doubt what pet groomers can make? Well, we were, in my family, started back in the 1960s, and at the very beginning, like 1961, actually. But even before that, my stepfather was a groomer in the 50s. And in those days, groomers often were working in kennels. People don't realize that, back in the 60s, many places you did not see commonly pet groomers in a strip center, let alone a standalone building right on the main road in town. Pet grooming businesses were typically operated as part of a kennel operation. Not many in vets, but there were still some vets. Very common in kennels, though, at least on the West Coast was our experience. And that's exactly where my stepfather came out of that environment. He would work where they needed a regular groomer all the time. Remember, even the pet owner demand for groomers was not like it is today. So the more you knew a breeder or a kennel owner that was also a breeder, there might be more steady work there, and enough that, we need a grooming department to be a part of this operation. So that's where it was starting from. So again, if you're driving around, even in upscale areas, you didn't always see, oh look, there's a groomer. Let's look for a groomer here. There were certainly no superstores with grooming. There were some mom and pop type pet stores in those days, and some of them had a grooming department. But again, that American demand for grooming wasn't there enough just yet, was just on the cusp of starting with more of an explosion in the pet population, where you're going to then find the demand for other services to help care, veterinary care, grooming care, dog training. So then if we look at when this demand started to grow, well, we were one of the first in our area in California, and there were a few others that followed. And, by the way, most of these other owners were friends of ours. Unlike many communities, we actually networked with the other groomers in our area. We knew several of the other shop owners. We didn't have a lot of this inordinate amount of competition and talking behind one another's back that still can go on. Today, we actually formed an early association in California of pet groomers. In those days, it was pretty progressive. Well, it was kind of fun because to start to see pet grooming businesses pop up on main streets, some of you will know the El Camino Real in California, quite a boulevard that stretches many, many, many miles across valleys. And groomers started popping up and their own businesses. That was really something for the people to talk about communities, seeing the first of its kind, so many of these and salons or shops. And that was uplifting the professional reputation of what a pet groomer is, just beginning to. If you may even notice, though, all the way even into the 80s, Still, the stereotypical view of a pet groomer, if we look at the nation, the United States, was not very, just a wonderful thing. It was like there were many businesses that have these beautiful locations. They're florists, there's furniture stores, but you didn't see too many groomers mixed in around them. If they were in a shopping center, I remember in our area, somewhere in the back corner, with no road visibility. And, the public judges. We're not talking about judging the owner of any one business by what their business looks like, but they would just say, well, I can see no one, I guess, in the grooming industry can afford that higher rent and be right out on Main Street yet. That actually took a period of about 25 years to really get going for itself. So somebody who's just getting in the industry, just watch the evolution. You should know this industry you're getting into has been in a constant state of uplift. There has been many wonderful professionals that have contributed to this. There's too many to name here. A lot of them are at our website in the associations, and there's been people given 5-6 decades of their life to helping bring grooming even to where it is today. It was far radically different in the mind of a lot of even today's consumers who are probably 50 years old and older, because they remember when pet groomers were not out on Main Street hardly at all. It was rather unique to see one, and that it was actually good. It created a little bit of talk. Hey, have you seen that new place? It's Grooming Pets. It's not like that today, is it? I mean, it's not that unusual to see it. So we even got one endorsement for our book, From Problems to Profits, that came from Belton Morris, who was the head and founder of the United Animal Nations, who worked for animal welfare. And what he said about my mother's business is that it was lifting up and changing, evolving the stereotypical view of the grooming industry. And we still all want that today. I don't think there's any groomer today that still wouldn't like to see that overall in our whole nation that we get more professional reputation from and respect. That's the word I'm looking for, respect from pet owners. Well, we have to earn that. And it's not a vocationally licensed program that is supposedly going to help with professional reputation. It does to an extent with the consumer. It's certainly not a cure-all for any kind of problems, but it would help. But it's not that way. So what are we dealing with? We're dealing with it's all up to you. If you're going to be employed, you'll want to work in a professional location. If you are going to open up your own business, it's going to be as professionally perceived by the public as what you deliver. So that's when my parents and some other groomers in California formed one of California's first associations. They just set out on, here's what we need to do. And the association came up with probable ways to go about uplifting the professional reputation. Remember, in those days, there were almost no books on how to groom. We were very independent. You almost only learned in those days through apprenticeship. So how is this being viewed back then by the public? Well, the public is not going to think it's a prosperous industry if they don't see prosperous people out in the open that are called groomers. They're not going to think it's prosperous if they don't see commercial locations that are, hey, that's an upscale building. Look at how it's beautifully designed. It catches their eyes. The advertising, the menu of services that's offered, whatever, that people go, gee, I just didn't really realize that you could do this. We heard that. I know my mother. I heard it at the front desk, but I never really realized that a grooming business could be this popular with the community and that involved. And of course, in Later on, my mother went on to be a chiroptomist and got very involved in fundraisers for the museum and all. And, like there are groomers today called the dog lady in town. Yeah, she was the dog lady in her town, city. And that helps uplift the reputation. We're changing the stereotypical image. When I travel, I still will go into places where there's some pretty beat up looking little shops. And I'm not getting on those people, but what I'm saying is the public viewpoint, the local public draws its opinions from what they see and hear, don't they? And they just think, well, what am I thinking? I guess that maybe it's tough to make a living in that, and you just can't afford a real nice place, and groomers just probably don't make that much money. So are these misconceptions? Absolutely. It's absolutely, and there's nothing wrong with the way anyone's running their place. If they're happy with that business and the services are fine and the pet care is humane and adequate, that's all that matters. But we're talking here about public perception. And the perception of the public will be, hey, you can do well in grooming or you can't do well. And if I don't see anyone in my area doing well, you can't do well. And that swings us right in then to what some career seekers face. What do they face? Oh, skepticism at times. At times. I can only give you figures. I would say at the beginning of most seminars where I knew the topic was something to do with getting into this as grooming, or it was at a school and they had made the decision, but I was going to help them with their career planning and maybe downline to angle them a little bit toward becoming self-employed. But I would start off to see where we're all at, because sometimes in a room of career seekers, you'd be surprised that they don't share what's your experience with other people. When you've shared, I'm leaving my position as a secretary at the law firm. I'm leaving my position as a sales representative for a multinational corporation. I'm leaving my job for a big insurance company in a high-rise downtown. And what are we doing? What are they doing? They're becoming pet groomers. And sometimes you are going to have jaw drops. It's kind of fun. You should go with it and be fun. Laugh at that, because that now you're seeing public perception. It'll only be as real and what it is in your area for what people have come to know about pet grooming in your area. Today, you're probably not going to face anywhere near the amount of shock and awe that I've seen in some places because of another factor. There are factors that came about as a result of these superstores adding grooming. Whether that's the environment you like to work in or not, I look at it that the superstores are giving another career path entry for a lot of people with that can't afford options. And the corporate environment is right for some groomers. It's all a matter of choice. Let's get beyond the work environment there and go to the point. Pet grooming became validated to a great degree, to the benefit of all groomers, whether they realize it or not, when grooming popped up in these superstores. And you're seeing, wait a minute, there's a company that has a lot of stock out there, and man, I just make good money off that stock, and I own some of that, and boy, they're being publicly traded, and that place has in neon out there grooming. Grooming became validated as and part of the American family experience of pet ownership to a great degree when it gets validated by companies worth lots of millions and millions of dollars, and that they would invest and put that at risk and add grooming inside there. I'm very thankful for their entree in that respect. It validated grooming. That kicked it up its own one more notch, that grooming is a real profession in this country. And do we have a ways to go yet? Yes, we do. Again, your area will be specific. But in my seminars, when I asked that, at least half the people that raised their hand, always half, sometimes more, but it was always a good half, would say that they got some strong skepticism. Now, skepticism can be based on a couple things in this case. It's that on some extremes, and I've had these experiences, but my son was going to be a veterinarian, or could have been a professional. Usually, again, lawyers, doctors, right? Yes, I've had students in grooming schools that were headed in that route, and that's what the parents wanted their children to be, and they didn't have a lot of free will, but they found their way into grooming. Yeah, that does go on. I did find a few more that came out where they were going to be veterinarians, because we found a good source of part-time help in our business, by the way, was from a veterinarian college with the University of California, and it was about an hour's and a half drive away. And the students becoming vets don't get very much hands-on work with animals, and they love to take even part-time bather positions with us, which was great because they're very flexible around their courses. But they got to work one-on-one. It wasn't theory. They got to work with the pets, and they were great. And we actually learned a lot of little things from them, over the years by listening to the students, and they were learning the anatomy and certain care things. And it was a nice symbiotic blend. And a great way to find part-time students was through college, especially where there was veterinary medicine being taught. So some of them actually said, you know what, I found out that it's working with the grooming side, working with the pets that matters to me, and I don't know if I'm going to go be a veterinarian. I think I'm going to become a groomer. And they did. And so that does happen sometimes. Now, the others, I must say, it's just that these people probably have never seen prosperous, we'll use that word, prosperous pet groomers. And, immediately when you tell someone, this is what I'm going to do and be, they're going to go back to what they've seen on television, in the media, or what they've seen locally, right? And they look at you and say, but I just don't see you as that. But you know what? It doesn't matter. You've got to do what you want to do and follow your passions. That's all about. Grooming is about following passions. There's the requirements of the patients to work with pets and some artistic styling, but ultimately it's a passion to work with the animals and a passion for style. And that's it. And if you want to be happy in your life, you'll find a way to follow your passions and go with it, and you're probably more likely to be successful. Now, the others did get support. They were just very happy to have a family member following their passion, and they enjoy the passion. So that other roughly 40-50% that was out there, it does exist. Your experience will be unique to you. But most everybody, we've talked about it a bit at Groomer Talk. Oh, yes, some definitely were faced with the skepticism. I can tell you as a consultant for many years, though, something inside. Usually, most of the clients are women, but I occasionally do get calls for consultation from a male who, quite often, is not a groomer. And yet I'm getting the call from this male who wants to know things about managing grooming businesses, and that's interesting. And in fact, now I've had at least 100 couples travel to our ranch for a consultation, and it's a male-female team, usually husband and wife. And what happens is a husband gets very intrigued where they see their wife become, hey, pretty good at this, and you've got a growing business, and gosh, look at the demand, and you're working longer hours now, but there's demand. And I'll tell you what, I've seen about 50-60% of these couples end up where the husband comes into the business, and because they sometimes come from a business background, and so they feel they can gravitate and provide and promote the business and do their part by helping. Because we all know at the end of a work day of grooming, it's not the easiest thing to sit down and do all the paperwork and the management reporting and things. In fact, some of that's swept under the carpet, but it is so important. And so the husband fills in. Occasionally the husbands will become groomers. I have some great dual groomer systems, and man, that bottom line of those, as long as they're willing to do some grooming. Bottom line, when you're not hiring stylists until you really need them, and then you have a husband and a wife both grooming and putting that money toward their own paychecks, you start to see some pretty good joint incomes start to come about this, such that, and indeed, I've seen where the husband's making more money in a couple, 3 years after coming into the grooming business. So it's quite possible. But what are we talking about here? A joint team. So we're back with, can you make a living? Yes, you can make livings. Obviously, we have about anywhere from 60 to 90,000 pet groomers in the United States. Now at PetGroomer.com, www.PetGroomer.com, there is a section on surveys, and we've taken surveys to find out what average incomes were. Well, we have a lot of groomers making even in the high teens into the mid 20,000 range. You don't have to, and that may sound very low to people coming in from other careers in the financial district, of this downtown, this metro area. But I have plenty of groomers that work themselves up into the $50,000 to $60,000 a year range, which is highly compatible with a lot of positions that would be in the working world. So if I'm leaving sales and coming into this on my own, yes, you can make that living. Of course, we caution you just don't go to school for 300 hours, 600 hours, and you're making that kind of money when you get out. You have a lot to learn. You have a lot of productivity to gain. So when you come out of school, you may only be grooming by yourself 2, 3, 4 pets a day in your 8-hour period, whereas in a year, in 2 years, you could even do double that. And maybe you could even start getting a bather inside of a place if you go working with you, if you go self-employed. Well, there's so many variables that go along there. But you won't immediately leave a $50,000 a year job and go start grooming and just do that if that's all you're going to do, is not even buy an existing business. You're going to go to school and then do a business right away rather than having built up all your productivity. So productivity is huge in achieving your financial goal. So it's very important as you plot out your career that and from a financial point of view, that you know the transition period. I'm going to go to school. You want, if you can, to have as little debt as possible during this time. You want to be able to realize, because even if you come out and get a job and you're paid on commission and you're going to get 55% commission of what you can groom, but if you really haven't got this productivity down and you're not able to do 7 or 8 in a day at that commission rate, and you're only down at 2 or 3, well, you're making a lot less than those other groomers that are able to do 7 or 8 in an average working day. How long is it going to take you? Well, that's up to you. That's absolutely up to the individual. We have to evaluate each groomer to the quality of the training they got and their ability to rapidly acquire, or to have that natural talent that they just get it quickly and show them once and they start doing it and all. you'll have to personally evaluate yourself there. But no matter what, that doesn't mean that you cannot get there. So you want to realize that that there is a transition period. And I always say to give yourself a year or two to get up to your maximum productivity. There are some much less. There are some even more than that. Where, of course, I don't want to go off too much on here into chatting about education, but even if you've gone to school, if you don't know yet, you're going to keep on learning and learning and learning and learning. And even if you've gotten out of school and you've got a job, you should be acquiring all the DVDs that are out there, the best books that are out there, and sometimes in your nights at home, watch these DVDs and keep learning, keep learning. Go to trade shows, keep learning. Never get too comfortable. When you get comfortable and you're not learning what is your trade that you tell the world, this is what I am, we usually find you're going to reach a plateau point, this comfort zone. I now make this much, and this is the way that I live. And it isn't all about learning more just to make more money, but this chat is about finance. Can I make a living as a pet groomer? You're going to have more pride in yourself. You're going to have a better reputation for yourself the more you keep learning with knowledge. But we are focusing on finance in this chat. So, of course, the more you learn, the more the potential that you're going to get the better paying job, or you will go into self-employment. It also means that continuing education plays a direct part in your financial progress in this industry, and that you should never lose focus in continuing education. This is partly why we have very experienced groomers with 30 years experience at Groomer Talk that will share with you. We have many wonderful people there that share and you know what? And even that once in a while they say, wow, I'm still learning some things here from one another. That's the way the industry should be, and the attitude. It helps keep it fresh to you. And the more that you have a passion for your skills, the more likely that the old saying that to make the gold, follow your passions. That is absolutely true. It's more likely that something within you is going to find the path that gives you the best, because it's delivering your passion. You're like a magnet attracting better offers, better opportunities are coming your way because you're a magnet. Passion creates magnetism. That's a simple way to put it. Passion creates magnetism, and money will follow. The gold will follow you, is the old saying. That's absolutely true. The more that you keep the passion alive for being a groomer. Now, what are some other variables in making a living? Okay, employment. Again, there are ways to break it down, but let's just say that we're talking here. So someone listening to this may say, but I don't make that, and whatever. Well, we're talking about someone who's working full-time. Let's say we call that 40 hours a week, or pretty close to that. Well, there is a range that's very common still in the $20,000 ranges. However, with skill and productivity, this comes a factor. There's many that are in the $30,000 to $50,000 ranges in modest to upscale areas. And of course, there are some that are higher than that. I have groomers in upscale areas with 5-10 years experience, and they make in the 60s and 70s. Tends to be very common for them. And this is on an employed basis. Now, we have had some that work very hard, more than 40 hours. They'll take on even a position where they're managing a department for someone else, and this usually has retail involved, and they may get commissions from those retail sales. It's mixed packages, and they can easily make 75 to 100 or slightly over 100,000 a year. Again, we've had a few of those that have been on our board and posted their incomes at PetGroomer.com. So all I'm telling you is it's possible. They do it. It's highly motivated people, and they work longer hours, probably than 40 hours, but they are making close to six figures, anywhere from easily 75 to 110. I've actually placed some groomers that finally said, I don't want to run my business anymore. You know what? I would rather go work hard for a larger company, and will you help me get a position in with them? And they knew that this was someone with 10, 15, 20 years of experience, and these people did get these packages, and were making very close to six figures as long as they lived up to certain levels of results. Grooming so many, maybe related to commissions off sales and things like that. But my purpose here is to say, so see, it is possible, but that comes with experience. It doesn't happen immediately. You remember that transition period from your prior job into this. You need to allow yourself a couple years at least to migrate into a higher end groomer on the income side of things. Now, another way to make that level of income, let's say from $50,000 and up, is to choose to be your own groomer employer, meaning I'm self-employed. I'm a groomer, but I'm my own employer. So you may form a corporation. You may just be a sole proprietorship. That's self-employment. Self-employment can have all those same ranges. Some people only want to groom 2 or 3 days a week, and they can groom out of their home, and they'll do house call, and they're happy with $15,000 a year, $20,000, $25,000 a year. See the variable again. The wonderful thing about pet grooming is that you really can't make as much as you want. It just depends on what are you going to have to do to make it. Well, it's not a problem to put in to work full time, even as self-employed, and to make in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, somewhere in those ranges. One of the differences, though, is, and this is where some stop, because they say, I'm happy right here, because I don't want to go the next step, and they know what that next step is, and I would say it's becoming an employer, meaning you're hiring other groomers. And that opens up a lot of new responsibilities, but it is a great route for potential to eventually be laying down your clippers a bit more and managing more over a period of time, which helps your general well-being of the body. There's other advantages, but again, we're sticking with finance in this chat. So I do have clients, again, that go easily from $50,000 to $100,000 a year. Not what they ring up on the registers. We're talking about what they'll call this is net income from the business before taxes. And so if the business brings in $150,000 a year after all the bills are paid, they have $75,000 left over, and that's their sort of, think of it as what their gross wages before taxes are from their business for themselves. And they may have 2 or 3 employees, and some have 4 or 5 or 6 employees. And these are grooming only locations. So yes, another way, if you're that motivated, and again, I'm speaking from experience. I've had, for example, I had a lady that was a dealer in a casino and she was doing pretty well, making $200 and $300 a day just in the tips consistently. A card club, because it wasn't truly a casino, it was a local card club in California. And she said, this is what I want to do. I just don't want to be in that environment anymore. I have a passion to be with animals. And so she was a great example of how to show that, you're not going to come right out of school and make $300 a day. You're going to have to transition yourself into being a highly productive groomer and a skilled groomer to make $300 a day, say, like this. And she stuck with it, by the way. But it did take her a couple years to get into that kind of range, and she finally did grow a business, and by hiring some extra employees, and makes more than 300 a day for herself. But see what she had to do. So yes, you can make a living as a pet groomer, but the more you want, the more energy you got to put out. How's that going to be? Well, again, you're going to have to work for someone who's got a pretty high-end business that's very busy to make incomes of over $50,000 a year and up, or you're going to have to grow a business, and if you want to get $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 as fairly simply, without a lot of other employees, but it's doing it wisely. Now, there's some that'll immediately hear this say, "No, I can't. I'm doing that, and my groomers are making more." I have one of my other chats is all about that. That's the way the businesses are organized. I have a talk about the biggest financial mistake commonly made by grooming business owners. That is one of the most important chats I'll ever do, and it's a whole day seminar. It's one of the most important things to learn. So let's not say that one person's experience is true for everyone. How you organize a grooming business will make a big difference. I deal with a lot of owners who will tell me that the groomers make more than the owner does. And how do we turn that around? And we do turn those around. These are management issues. That's why that happens. It's just purely management. It's not cutting pay, even a dime. It's still the way we have to look at the whole of the operation to see where the dollars are going to. I never cut pay on anyone to make more profit. In fact, we pay some of the highest wages there are. And we never cut the quality of the pet care to make more. In fact, in our business, which was very large, and they'll say, "Oh, yeah, that's an assembly line kind of place, whatever." Well, we never cage-dried a pet. We never left a pet sitting under a fan. The pet was hands-on, beginning, middle, end, which many groomers cannot say that. And yet, so what's wrong with a larger operation? I see the smaller operation giving a lot less hands-on attention to the pet. Now, that's a chat in its own, isn't it? Really, to learn about that and the prejudices that go along, where we talk about money and performance, and we work with artists and the mentalities like this, we have a lot of misunderstandings, and so don't want to go there. The biggest misunderstanding would be that you can't make a living as a pet groomer. First off, you got to define what is a living to you. That's how I start. In fact, I would usually have everyone write down on paper at a seminar. It's not everyone else's info, right? It's their private info. But the question was, how much a year do you need to run your household? And you can include in that vacation money and saving money for a down payment on a house, whatever it is. I don't care what your costs are, and I want to put so much into savings. Okay, what is that number? Steve, I need $2,000 a month. Steve, I need $4,000 a month. Steve, I need $6,000 a month. Okay, that's all I want to know. I don't need to know anything else. Now we can plot how big are you going to grow? Can we find in 2 to 3 years that we can get you up into a 60% commission position, working at an upscale place, and what will that make in this? We're going to have to study the region where you're at and see. I can do 8 a day. The average service fee is $50 a day. That's $400 there. That rung up on the register. I get 60%. That's $240 a day. And that's pretty good for a lot of groomers today. That is pretty good. So you can just figure right there that a lot of groomers are doing pretty well today if they can get $200 to $250 a day as their gross salary before taxes. So there's a number for you. Yes, you can get to $250 a day in most places, most upscale, and not really as much upscale as in a major metro area. Being rural may not, but let's not even throw out that just yet, because there's other ways to go about this. Because I know I always have some concern that, yeah, but I'm a single mom and I got kids and I really need that $4,000 a month, Steve, and I need six. Okay, we'll talk about growing a business. There's other ways to grow a grooming business. What some people will do, and we start writing like business plans with the Pet Grooming Business Plan Helper, is, okay, I've got a 2 or 3 year plan to get my grooming education and to get my productivity up, and I'll go with continuing education. There's other ways to increase the revenues of a business, and that's to add ancillary departments. So I've had some fascinating performances with people getting up business within a year to 2 years, bringing in $400,000 to $500,000. But that's because they had grooming department and they added a dog training department. They added sort of a boutique, or they added some a pet hotel or operation. So what's important there is they have multiple sources of revenue. Now they have to be sharp because they can't do everything. But they have to find what they can do and keep this managed well, and what the cost is to hire the other help. But at least each department is providing a bit of money to theirs. So they may only make $10,000 extra a year from this department and $10,000 a year from this other department, but they're added on to their $36,000 to $46,000 a year from the grooming department that's really operating well now. And so now they start getting up to that. In this one case, someone wanted $6,000 a year. That's probably going to be from multiple service. And remember, when we talk about these numbers, I'm going to give you one of the biggest cautions out there. If you go out and you get someone to share what they make, and I've had this happen with quite a few groomers. I'll say, well, how much do you make as being a groomer? That way, because I want to ask it simple, because it's really not the correct way to really answer the question, but it is the way most groomers talk, groomer to groomer. And they'll, okay, one over here, Ann has a mobile grooming business, and she'll say, oh, well, I make $78,000 a year. But what the question is, oh, are you saying that's what the business makes, or you? Well, of course, if they're a sole proprietor, they are the business. And see how we get mixed up in the terms here. What you want to say is, how much do you make from that business, if you want to use just the cleanest, simplest language. What do you net and take home? What's your take-home money for you is what you're really getting to. So realize when you hear a lot of numbers being said, groomers will most often share that are one-person businesses primarily here, are really sharing what they gross. My mobile business makes $80,000 a year. Okay, what they're probably saying is that is what's rung up. I use that term, rung up on the register. Gross revenue, gross sales income of services. Whatever it is, it's their gross. But the real question is, if you're looking to compare yourself to them, is, well, fine, I want to make that too, but I need $50,000 before taxes to cover my household and my kids and whatever, and I'm not married or whatever. Or even, we already have a mortgage. See, I get career seekers that come in, they already do have mortgages and large household incomes are required because they're already obligated. So what's ideal is when someone comes into grooming where they're not going to buy a business and they're going to be the groomer and they have to learn, is it sure helps to come in without a lot of prior debt, because you're going to be more relaxed while you gain your productivity. You got to first gain the first education, continue with education, gain the productivity, which only comes from hands-on experience out in the real world, so that you can then gauge and amp up slowly making more and more because your productivity is getting higher, and because of your not breadth of knowledge, you're able to do more breeds and do it correctly and keep the customers pleased and all. Bottom line, can you make a living? Yes, I'll go back. There's ways to make $25,000 range, somewhere in that range. There's ways to be in the group that makes anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 a year. People who tend to go on to select employed positions might make $50,000 to $75,000 a year. Some who start businesses and they start getting other employees will easily get $50,000 a year to $75,000 if they're managing it correctly. I know there's always some saying, yeah, he says that, I don't. Oh yes, there's quite a few that do, but it may take some management skills, just as management education. That's why we wrote From Problems to Profits, and a lot of other further education beyond that to learn how to. You need to be both the small business, savvy, as well as being a very savvy stylist to do that. But I have some, and yes, I have top 5% of our existing management consultation clientele make anywhere from $100,000, and I have some at $250,000 a year as their take home. These people, though, have almost always, on that very high end, they have very large businesses. These are pet care centers. I just lump them as that. They're probably a pet care center. Really wise people, and they've got the business savvy, but it will still have taken them a few years to get there, sometimes several years to get up to that level. But they do exist out there. You just don't hear a lot about them, whether it's in our our trade magazines and whatever. You don't hear a lot about these people. I do, because it's pretty funny. I have groomers that I can always tell the business acumen of somebody, because I'll have some call and say, I was thinking of buying your book From Problems to Profits. Do you really think it's worth $29.95? And I don't, what do I say to that? Even if one idea served you, isn't one idea worth $29.95? And I sell a lot of those books to prosperous people who don't need it, who don't really need. They're not needy. They're not lacking. They're not lacking. See, they're not in a state of lack. They call me because it's like they're jumping on it and they're going, hey, send me a copy of that book. Gosh, even if I get one tiny idea from you, maybe I can get my $250,000 up to $300,000. It's just this mindset that they have, and they're always looking. They're nicest people to us, and it's just like, wow, thanks for doing this, and I'm just, I'm looking for some wonderful ideas, and you'll see some write endorsements for us. See, one idea it can be worth what, $1,000 a year? No, maybe $100,000 a year. In fact, I know something like our preferred client program, how to schedule, the AB system, it might be called, is a way to rate your clients. I, as a management consultant, went out to dozens and dozens of pet grooming businesses, went through their appointment cards, and made this shocking statement to them. All they took basically was standing appointments, meaning you come in today, and when you leave today with your pet, you already have your next appointment scheduled. And that works well. We all love those kind of clients. I mean, heck, who wouldn't? But we found a way to make most of our clients similar to that, and we call that the option B. So we started implementing that, and in the book From Problems to Profits, it's called the Preferred Client Program. You can rename that anything you want, but it's an appointment scheduling program of some uniqueness, and it goes back to the 1960s. I mean, it really set a standard. But what did it do? We found that without adding another client to your client base, and the more clients, the more potential to make money, right? But without raising prices, without cutting wages, without doing anything different, adding more clients, anything that would normally increase your annual sales, what do? We induct people, at least 80% of the clientele, into an appointment scheduling program. And what we found out through studies, which we have published those, I will bring them out again. They were in a special newsletters we did it throughout the 90s with actual proof from businesses that right now, if you don't have an appointment scheduling program in place, and I mean in place, every customer's been asked, maybe they didn't all join, but asked, you take it seriously. 30% more income is sitting there because you're not regulating the appointments for your clients with courtesy. You're not dragging them in. It's not what we're talking about. We're helping you to take better care of their pets, and it's part of your service, and you're giving that time away free if you want to look at me, but I got to help them. I'll just send a postcard. That's not what we're talking about. But salon after shop, after some mobiles even, but it's especially oriented towards salons and shop. Mobiles are generally very good at blocking and even customers out for a year. But you put that into place, 30%. In other words, if you're ringing up on the register $100,000 a year right now in your shop, but you don't have much of a professional appointment scheduling program other than, yeah, sure, well, we're willing to book your next appointment, standing appointment. I'm talking about something radically deeper beyond that there was really 130,000 there waiting, that latent 30,000, because you're waiting for them to call you to schedule that next appointment. You know, if I have 500 clients and I get one more appointment, this is an easy way to look at this. I have 500 clients. If I can do something, a courtesy service that gets one more appointment out of them, that's 500 more appointments in the year, right? 500 more appointments in a year times, let's say, average service fee of $40 is $20,000 that's latent. It's sitting there, but you have to actualize it through service to the customer. So it's both client service and marketing in one, and that's what we were expert at. And that's, if anything, is in from problems to profits. That's great, and that's what was being, especially these people that are already making hundreds of thousands of dollars, saying, I never thought about doing it that way. And then I get some groomers that call, is this really worth $29.95? I just showed you a way in your clientele to get 30% more money, and here it is laid out in black and white how to do that. So that's different attitudes toward knowledge and experience. Whenever I changed my career, because, you know, I wasn't always in grooming for a short period in my life, but we went from grooming to where I became more of a webmaster and a consultant. The first thing I did was go to consultant experts and say, how do I become a consultant? The first thing I did when it got into the web is I started taking seminars, and what's a webmaster? What does a webmaster do? Whatever. I didn't, not follow the path of those before me who have made it simple for me. That's how you make a living in a business, is don't keep reinventing everything. Take advantage of all that knowledge and experience that went before you. I love people when they do that. And we have more of that than ever now. Because it means it's more reason that, of course, you can make a living in a groomer. But maybe you're going to change the whole image in your area. You might just redefine what a prosperous pet groomer is in your area, because there are none now. And that's why the family was saying, behind your back even, what is this dog grooming thing with her? What is he thinking about? You just have to have some faith in yourself. Look what others are doing. Share with us at PetGroomer.com. Remember, now we have social media, which is making this not such a big issue because you can get that interaction. But for decades, we were more isolated. And now, and sometimes that's why it's such a shame when you hear groomers. I don't talk to any of the other groomers in my town. I mean, we're always, what so-and-so's doing over there. And it's like, it's so foolish because we can all learn from one another. There's thousands of pets available, if we look at dogs and cats, for every pet grooming business today. There's thousands, at least. We're up to just say 28 to 30,000 grooming businesses or businesses with grooming now. So there's well more than 3,000 pets for every business. Why don't we team up and go after it and help convince the community more and more that grooming is a validation? It's a responsible career, and we're part of the community. We're an important part of the community. We help most veterinarians know if they have good groomers in their area, that the groomer sees a pet from head to toe. We use our nose, we use our eyes, we use our fingers, we sense and we find all kinds of things, and we generate a lot of revenue for vets. We do by all our inspections. That just comes natural. So we even built good relationship with vets, and we started making money and money and money, and yet again, no one can put us down for this and that, whatever. They just don't know because they weren't there. We gave the best services. We had dedicated people on the front counter. We didn't distract our stylists, and we let them stay in that zone grooming those pets, but they could hear the thanks and wave and chat for a second with whoever they groomed, the owner, if they wanted to. We'd never cage dry or blow dried, like with inside of any kind of lodge or against a wall with a fan on them. One-on-one, all the way. And if it needed to be sack dried, we sack dry, whatever was appropriate. Larger does not mean that it's less quality. You can have less quality in a big place, you can, but there are those. But you can also have that in a one-person business. I mean, that's possible when I hear someone's working by themselves and doing 24 in a day. And yes, I've heard that. We've seen it on our board. If you add up the number of minutes being spent with that pet, and then I look at the number of minutes we spent hands-on, and some of the larger businesses are said that they're the ones that are forsaking quality, give me a break. These are prejudices and judgments with no founding. And that's what you're going to also experience perhaps when you start asking the question, can I make a living? People are only going to know based on what their experience is from what they've interacted with. Well, I've only got one groomer in town, and the property looks pretty bad, and whatever, I guess you can't make a good living. No, what they have to realize is that's that choice of that pet groomer, and that's the way that pet groomer operates and could be doing just fine services. Let's not judge the whole industry by what we see, but the consuming public in the media does that. So the best proof in the pudding is what I've shared here with the ranges I've seen. Read the surveys. Don't listen to me. Read the surveys at PetGroomer.com. Go to www.PetGroomer.com, enter to the home page, and you'll see a link for surveys. And you can read the actual incomes that were being reported there. There's some wonderful grooming prices surveys, too, which will usually people interested in a career like to know, well, what kind of prices are being charged out there? World's biggest grooming survey of prices are also located there. Talk with other groomers. Talk with other groomers at Groomer Talk. Come join our message board, and maybe some will give you ballparks, what kind of figures they're making. But again, I try to get most of them to put that info anonymously over in the survey area. So our surveys will help serve that purpose and give you some proof to others. And then let me just get back to ultimately adjust your life to do your passion. If you can only make so much, but you're doing what you love, and that maybe that's worth it to you. You have to answer that question for yourself. But you can make in the teens, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s ranges, no problem. once you get your skills and productivity in order. You can be the exception and work harder, usually self-employment, not always, but usually, and you can go into the 70, 80, 90s, and over into the six figures if you want to really build up a large operation. You won't be a full-time groomer as much as but you're evolving. I got all my grooming. I'm still going to be doing some grooming, but I'm also going to be managing a larger operation. What's also important is to always look. I can give you some examples. I remember back in the 60s where we had pet bathers who made, probably in today's we would say they made $2 or $3 per bathing that they did. Yeah, it was even around $2 as I remember. And that was okay with them. They were usually young and this was their first job. But at first, especially working with pets, and they found they really loved it, and then they thought, well, maybe I'll become a pet stylist after that. And usually after they got up to the skills of being what I call full charge groomer or stylist, they then started thinking about what more they could do. It's like, I'm going to open my own place. And so some of them did open their own place. Remember, once you open your own place, you don't stop there. Now, we all like to get a 401k program or something when we work, usually for larger employers, corporations, whatever. You're going to see more benefits that you may not see. Although there are some veterinarian clinics that will offer that, and there's some high-end kennels that will offer packages like that. Otherwise, remember that just because your income keeps going up as you achieve, it doesn't mean to go spend it. And I really have seen some stories of groomers close to me that came up under working with my mother. I mean, they had time and they really learned the business side from her. There was two routes. There were those that said, oh boy, now that's given me enough to put a down payment on the RV and a down payment on a boat and a down payment on this. And all they did was they could keep up. They were acquiring all these things, but they were also acquiring more debt, but a more desirous lifestyle in their opinion. Then there were others that said, I'm going to start my own business. And they did that in a couple, 3 years. 4 years, maybe 5 years down, they bought the building. They stopped paying rent and said, I'm going to buy my own building, but besides that, I'm going to then start leasing out some space. I remember the one bather who went up through the ranks with our on-the-job training, became an assistant groomer, who became a full-charge groomer, stayed many years with us, and then went to the other side of the valley and did a salon, but she ended up buying acreage, and on her acreage she built a kennel, and that land and her built property today is about $10 million. And she'll credit it a lot to my mother, because my mother gave her a business mind was, don't acquire a lot of debt. Get some of those things that you're going to want, but don't, just because you're making more money now, start acquiring more and more and more and more things. Take care of the baby, which is your business, and help it to make more. Grow that business, then acquire those things. And try to get your own building if you can. Buy wisely, learn how, you just don't buy when the market's just running up high. Try to find where you can own your own building. Try to get a building where you can be the landlords of some other spaces in there, and diversify. Try to look for wise but investments. Groomers can do this. And that's how some of the ones that are very exceptional, that make exceptional livings, I should say, in grooming. It's actually what they did with some of the profit that was going home as a paycheck for them. It's what they did with that. So you can, no matter what you make, try not to spend it all and put an X amount of portion for your savings, but put something into some way to grow that investment opportunity for yourself. So my best news is, you can make a living in pet grooming. It's very true. There are people in all these ranges that I've mentioned. It's just that you get the skill, the experience, keep learning, never stop learning, and learn the business side if you're going to become employed, self-employed. Learn the business side. Learn the business side. I'll say that again and again. Most of our work is taking people who are very excellent groomers. They're not so bad employers, but they don't understand the numbers, and that's why we do Grooming Business in a Box in our consultation. Is they don't know how to do the numbers and to study and to listen to the numbers and listen to their market area and what the market wants and all that. It's this other framework of mine, because the other part is the stylist in them. But this other part, you have to be over here. It's not a stylist. We tend to have more emotion, right brain, and over here we got to have this left brain, non-emotional, and just sit down and not think it's boring to look at the last month's performance and see if there's a story there, and maybe there's more money there that's sitting there waiting, but we aren't giving the clients all that we could be offering them, et cetera, et cetera. That's, you can understand. Well, the more that you can handle those two different mindsets in yourself. And again, that's why I said sometimes I'll see, and it's usually the wife, but she's got a good grooming business going, and this husband who comes in, he's just analytical, not so much the artist, and he'll come in, and they really do some magic together, blending those two energies together, and they're off on their way. And I've seen, almost never seen the wife, if she's the groomer, give up the business. And all, it's the husband who leaves his job someday, or leaves it part-time and starts taking over, and eventually sometimes they even get 2 locations going, and he makes it possible for them to add on sales of holistic foods. Let's put in the self-service bathing, and the wife gets to continue running the core of the business, which is the grooming, but he just keeps to earn his way of donating effort to the business to pay for his paycheck, and is that he creates ancillary sales out here and all these other companion services to the same clientele. Yeah, and it works out very well, and so they have a nice joint income. Those are usually well into the 6 figures if they're highly motivated people. So this is going on in some areas. This is not going on in plenty of areas. The wonderful thing about grooming is you can make it pretty much happen where you want it to happen, unless you're in a region that has just been financially devastated. If you're a one factory town and they shut down this factory and you're devastated and whatever, yeah, those places, it's going to be hard to do that kind of thing. But some people will move and do, into an area where you can. So there are some regional considerations, but overall, can you do it